Hey everyone, it's me, Rami Marks, your Tangled Yogi out here in Northern California. How are you? I hope you're doing well. I'm so excited that you are joining us for this class today. This is called the Pajaro Festivo. This is part of our Mexican Folk Tangle series that we are continuing on with here at Tangled Yogi. And so let's begin by starting to talk about the things that you're going to need for class. So for class today, I happen to have a cardstock that I have cut 4 inches by 5.5 inches. I like these because they're a little bit bigger than the phi tiles. I have a little trouble with my eyesight, so working a little bit bigger is more helpful for me. The colors that you're going to need for class, I'm going to be working with the Uniball Gold pen. This is the Signo Uniball Gold, but if you have the Sakura Gold pen, you can use that or any other gold pen that you like, okay? I also happen to have my General's Chalk Pastel Pencil. This is the same one that Zentangle puts out as well, so headquarters has these there if you're looking for them, but this is the General's Chalk Pastel Pencil. You'll want to have your gummy eraser for any debris that's left over on your page when you're using the chalk pastel pencil. And you know me, I am a color pencil girl. I love my Prismacolors, so I will be using those today as well. So with that said, let's get started with the Pajaro Festivo. So hopefully you've had a chance to gather all the materials that you need for class. What I like to do in the beginning of my classes is take a moment to get centered before I create. So I hope you'll join me for a little breathing exercise just briefly here. So go ahead and sit into your chair nice and comfortably. Allow your feet to touch down onto the floor. Let your spine grow comfortably tall but not hard. And if you'd like, you can let your hands rest in your lap with your palms facing up. If you're comfortable with it, you can allow your eyes to close for a moment and just take a moment to land into your space, softening the shoulders away from the ears, relaxing through the chest, the rib cage, and the belly. And then letting your attention fall on the breath here. And just noticing the breath without judging it or trying to control it. Noticing if the breath is long and full or short and jagged. And let's begin to deepen the breath here by breathing in to the count of 4. And then exhaling to the count of 4. Breathing in to the count of 4. And exhaling out to the count of 4. And one more time, breathing in to the count of 4. And exhaling out to the count of 4. And then letting your breath return to its natural pace here. And just noticing for a moment, is the breath a little easier? Maybe a little fuller? So just acknowledging what's there. And then scanning inside of the body and noticing any places where you might be still holding tension, maybe in the shoulders or in the chest, softening in the belly. And let's take one more deep breath right here and let it go with a sigh. And then beginning to wiggle in the fingertips and the toes. And if you've closed your eyes, gently blinking the eyes open and adding vision back into your practice. And let's begin the class. All right, so let's go ahead and let go of this tile right here. I'm just going to move that off to the side, and I'm going to start with my charcoal pencil here. This is just going to help us to divide the space and create a string for our tile. So in Zentangle, we often work in designated areas, and so this is kind of how we're going to divide the space. So I'm just going to start out the regular old-fashioned Zentangle way by making my dots in each of the corners here. So you're going to see me come in and make a dot in each corner, and then I will go ahead and I will connect my lines. Now you can see that I'm going really lightly with that pencil. So I really want to just give a hint of where I'm going with it, but I don't want to press heavy. Okay, so I'm just continuing to turn my tile, and here we go. So I've got all four corners all set and ready to rock and roll. So if you need to pause me here, this is a good place to do it. Otherwise, we're just going to carry on here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to look for where I think the center of my tile is, and I'm just going to make a little dot there very lightly and see if that really kind of lines up. And I think I'm off just a little bit, so I'll come over just a little bit more. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to divide the space. And by the way, my pencil's just barely touching the page. So I really want you to keep that in mind as you're working with the chalk pencil. We're just barely touching the page here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come out from the corners here, and I'm going to come back in almost, I would say, an inch or an inch and a half. And then I'll go ahead and I'll do the same thing on the other side. So almost about an inch or an inch and a half away from the corner here. I'm looking to see if I did pretty well. This probably could come in just a little bit more. Okay. Once I have that, this is a really great place to show you how to use the gummy eraser. The gummy eraser is wonderful for removing any kind of excess debris, or if anything's not working for you. As you're setting up your string, you can always go ahead and just grab your gummy and go ahead and clean it up. So you can see I've got my two dots here, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to line it up with the other side. And this is going to give me a really nice idea of how far I need to go to create the arcs that I'm going to be creating in here. So go ahead, take a minute to finish yours up, and then when we come back, we're going to get started with tangling. Alright, so I know for myself that I really like to tangle vertically. It's a lot easier than tangling horizontally. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to turn my piece on its side here. And this is just going to help me to have a guide. So you can see that I've got these two dots here, and these are going to be my guides for creating the arcs that are underneath our bird here. So I'm going to use this guide, and I'm going to come down, I would say about 1/4 of an inch and in. And I'm going to start by creating my printemps, or printemps as some people know it. And I'm just going to make an arc. And I'm going to come over and down. And I'm not going to go past that dot, so I'm looking for it as my guide here. And I'm going to come back in again and make another printemps or printemps, however you know it as. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side here. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to come in. I'm going to look for that dot. There it is right there. And I'm going to come down just a little bit and start my printemps. Come up and over. And then I'll go down. Coming back in and creating that spiral once again right here. So it should look a little something like that. Okay, so take a moment to finish yours up, and when we come back, we will start tangling in the corners. So what I loved about the Mexican folk art was that a lot of the pieces or elements that they used had its roots in Zentangle somehow. And so I saw these leaves that were in some of the tangle, or rather in some of the Mexican folk art, and I thought, oh, that looks just like a Zentangle, so we're going to go ahead and tangle this one. So I'm going to come into the corner right over here, and I'm going to go ahead and come up and out about a good inch. I'll go over to the side and create a little bit of an arc and a little bit of an arc right over here. Okay, I'm going to go around to all four corners and do that very same thing. So I'm just going up and out about an inch, and then these guys are a little bit shorter on the side with a little bit of an arc to them. Turning, coming up and out about a good inch, and then having those lower ones out on the side. And last time right over here. So we're really just getting into the groove or the zen of it, right? Now once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a little bit of an aura that is kind of like a leaf-like shape. So I'm just going to come in and I'm going to make an arc that goes right over the top here. And then I'm going to go ahead and arc out and jump off the page. And I'm going to go ahead and arc out and jump off the page. I'm going to do the same thing in all four corners. So I'm just going to go ahead and make that arc and then jump off and jump off. Turning, jumping off, and jumping off. Last time for good luck. They almost look like little maple leaves, which I love. Now once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and add one more element to it, which is I'm going to go ahead and arc out, and then not unlike what we do with henna drum, I'm going to go ahead and come off the side here, make a dip, and then come right back in again. I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side here, so I'm going to come out, make a dip, and then come right back in. So I'll do the same thing over here, coming out, coming up, make a dip, and then over on the other side. I'm going to continue to turn. And this almost has an Art Deco type quality to it. Do the same thing on the other side. And one more right here for good luck. So it's got a really nice feel to it already, which I love. So go ahead and take a moment to finish yours up. Remember to relax your shoulders, let your breath be full and easy, and have fun. All right, so we're going to start to work inside of our little arcs here. So I'm going to start with this guy right here up at the top. Some of you have heard me talk about a tangle that I really love. It's called H2O Lily. But I saw this version of it inside of the Mexican Folk Tangle, and it had just kind of a softer feel to it. So we're going to do kind of our own version of it. So I'm just going to come in right here, and I'm just going to make a little V right here. So you can see that that's just a little V. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down and turn it into a leaf-like shape. Once I have that, I'm going to come into the center and I'm going to make a triangle. And then I'm going to put almost like a cloud-like shape above the triangle. So it's just an arc over the top, and then an arc and it drops down and touches, and then an arc and it drops down and touches. Okay, so similar to H2O Lily, but not quite the same. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to flip this bad boy upside down here, and we're going to go to the other side. So all we're doing is making our V. So you're getting into the zen of it because you know what you're doing. And then we make our leaf-like shape. Make a V or a triangle. And then you're going to go ahead and make an arc. Arc and touch down, arc and touch down. Super easy and super fun. Go ahead and finish yours up, and when we come back we're going to start to work on the sides and carry on with this really fun little tangle. So in order to carry on with this really fun tangle, we're going to need to put our bird in so we know how far we're coming out to the sides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come right in here and I'm going to drop down, I would say from the bottom of this flower, about 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to do the same thing down in here, so I'm just going to come up about 3/4 of an inch. Once I have that, I want you to think of a bowling pin, because that's really what this bird looks like, as a bowling pin. So I'm going to come in and come down a little bit, and I'm going to make a narrow U. Looks like an upside down U. Okay? So if I turn it, you can see it does look like a U. Okay? So once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and create kind of the body of the bowling pin by arcing out just a little bit, coming up, and then reconnecting. So really just super easy and soft. Now once I have that, I need to build the wings of this bird. So once I have this part, and by the way, if you need to pause me here, this is a great place to do it. I'm going to come out a little bit, I would say mid-head here. So this is his head right here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give him a little bit of a beak because he's turning to the side. And then I'm going to come out just a little bit deeper and make a little dot right here. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Now once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drop down and connect into his body. I'll do the same thing on the other side, so I'm just dropping down and connecting to the body here. I'm going to soften the top of his wing by rounding the arc. You can see that it's rounding the arc. And then I'm going to extend out, but I'm going to come out right underneath this flower here. So I'm just going to go ahead and extend out, and then you're going to see I'm just going to lift up just a little bit. I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side. So I'm going to come out and then lift up just a little bit. Now to create the bottom of the wing here, I'm going to do a little bit of scalloping. So I'm going to drop in and then I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 and touch the bird. Okay, so you can see that I'm leaving space inside of the bird's wings so that I can work in there. So careful not to make it too narrow. I'm going to drop down again and go 1, 2, 3, here comes 4 right here and drop in. Now you can see that my wing got a little bit low. And so the nature of this is, what I love about the charcoal pencil is if you have a line that you don't like, that's just making you uncomfortable, you can always go back in and just redesign that line again. So I'll just go 1, 2, 3, and then here comes the 4th. And then that way my wings look a little bit closer in their diameter there. Okay? Now once I have that, I'm going to take a moment to pause and we'll build a little bit more off of this wing in a minute. So what we're going to do is we're going to start to build some triangles off of the scallops, but I'm going to turn my piece upside down because I find it's easier to do the triangles right side up instead of upside down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build out from these little scallops in here. I'm going to come into this corner right here and I'm just going to build a little triangle and drop it in. I'm going to go ahead and do that again, build a little triangle and drop it in. One more time. And last one right over here. I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to just let it come over a little bit and then drop in. Coming over to the other side and doing the same thing. So I'm just making an arc and coming back in. Arc and dropping back in. Arc, dropping back in. Arc and dropping back in. I'll do one more right over here and just drop it right back in. so that when I come back around, look at how cool that bird is. He really has a lot of energy, which is a lot of fun. So go ahead, take a moment to finish yours up, and then when we come back, we're going to put our flower in. Okay, so now we've got our bird wings in there. You can see that I've left a little space on the sides, and that way I know that I'm going to be able to put my flower in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn my piece vertically once again. And remember this tangle that we did over here? We're going to do it right in here. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to create a V in between these two flowers right here. You can see that I've left a little space between the outside edge and here. I'm going to go ahead and make my little leaf. And then I'll go ahead and I'll make my triangle. And then remember those arcs that we did? So we're going to do the arc at the top, and then arc over here and touch, arc over here and touch. Okay? We'll do the same thing on the other side. So I'm just going to turn the piece, make my V, turn that V into leaves, go ahead and do the triangle, arc, arc again and touch, arc again and touch. Easy peasy. So now we've got those flowers in there, and we're just going to create a little bit of motion here to get a little bit of energy or movement, as it were. So I'm going to try to line this up right in the middle so I leave a little bit of space. So I'm going to come in right here, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drop down. See how I'm in the middle? And then I'm going to go ahead and create a little bit of a J right there. Okay? I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side. So I'm just going to come in. I'm going to try to keep my hand off of most of this. Come in and create a nice J right there. So once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and look at this here, and I think that this one is longer than this one. So remember how we were talking about that gummy eraser and having a little bit of freedom to make it how you want it to be? Well, I think I want that line to be a little bit longer. So I'm just going to carry it down and create that J. Go ahead and finish yours up, and then when we come back, we'll throw some leaves in there and a little bit of a flower. Alright, so let's go ahead and add some of those leaves to this piece here. So I'm just going to come in right underneath the flower, and I'm going to create a U-like shape. Now once I've got that in there, I'm just going to drop in and connect, and drop in and connect. I'm going to do it again. You can see I've got a little space right in here where the bird's wings are. I'm going to make that U-like shape. Drop in and drop in. Easy peasy. Now I'm going to do the same thing right here on the edge of the J. So I'm just going to come in, make my U-like shape, drop in, and then I'm going to put a little triangle in the center. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So I'm just looking for the spaces that I have here, and I'm going to go ahead and create a U-like shape, drop in, and I'll do it again. U-like shape, drop in, and drop in. Now you can see that I've got a little bit of a tight spot in here, so I'm just going to go ahead and make my U-like shape a little bit below the line there, and then I'll drop in, and I'll make my triangle shape. So really fun and easy there. Go ahead and take a moment to finish yours up, and then when we come back, we're going to put the tail on the bird. So I'm just going to go ahead and flip that bird upside down here, and I'm going to go ahead and take this little part of the bottom of the bird and create kind of like a petal-like shape. So it's just going to come in and connect with the bird. Once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and arc off to the side and I'll drop back in again, arcing off to the side, dropping back in, and one more time for good luck on each side. And you can see that that creates a really easy tail for the bottom of the piece here. Super fun, super easy, very relaxing to do. So above the bird in here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in just an element of whimsy by creating some daisy-like pieces in here. It's almost like doing a Bronx cheer. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to make a small circle right above his head, and then I'm going to just circle those circles with more circles. And then I'm going to come over right above the wing and do the same thing. So I'm just going to go ahead and create the circle, another one, and just keep doing like that. So it's just like Bronx cheer in its own little way. And then I'll do one more over here. And you know, every time I come back and do a tangle, it's always slightly different because, you know, I'm never the same person the next day or the next day after. So even when I created these, you know, it's always a different feel. So once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and pause for a moment and enjoy what I've got on the page, and then I'm going to come in and start to bring in my gold. Okay, so take a moment, finish yours up. I'm going to finish mine up, and then when we come back, we're going to start with the gold pens. Alright, so I've picked up my gold pen. I happen to be working with the Signo gold pen, but whatever gold pen you have handy is great. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start with working with our festive bird on the inside here. And I'm going to start to outline the bird that we already have the outline for. One of the reasons why I like working with the chalk is because it's not hard to work over the top of, and we can really start to get into the zen of it. We know what we're doing and we can just relax into it here. So I'm just going to go ahead and create his beak, and I'll puddle in with the gold, so I'll fill that in there. I'm going to go ahead and start to create his wings and let them kind of softly drift down. And you can see that I'm going to start to turn my tile to make it easy for my hands here. So that white chalk pastel pencil, it gives us kind of a dress rehearsal, which I love. But now we can just really flow right into what we're doing and enjoy it. To offer gratitude for our really nice materials that we're working with today, and gratitude for the time that we're taking to enjoy the creative process. So you can see I'm just getting in there and adding in the triangles. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Now, one element that I didn't add while we're working on the wings is this scalloping inside of the wings in here. And the scalloping is going to go a little bit like this. So I'm looking at my scallop line here, and I'm just going to drop down and I'm going to aura that scallop line, and then come into the center. And then I'll go again and I'll aura that scallop line as well, and I'll drop into the side there. Okay, so that's all it is. It's just an aura line. It's no big deal. So I'm going to come in, scallop. It's almost like the waves of the ocean. And then I'll go ahead and I'll scallop again. And that gives him, it's almost like he's wearing a dress, or his wings kind of look like a dress. And when we get this all done, it'll look very festive. So I'm just going to continue to go in and ink through here. You can see that I'm just working around on his tail. Now I'm going to turn the piece on its side and start to work with the printemps that we started with in here. So you can see that I'm just going in and starting to create those pieces in here. I'll turn my piece over to start working with the leaves. Remember, the lighter you go with your touch on the pen, the more the ink is going to flow. So if you tend to be heavy-handed, just be mindful and try to lighten up a little bit. I'm going to go over into my corners, start to work with the corners here. And then finally arcing to the sides, and then letting this come out to the sides as well. And letting this come out as well. I'm going to go over to the other side and do the same, so I'm just going to arc out. And come over. And I'm going to come up and over. You can see that that has a really nice feel to it already. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on the opposite side, and then I'll ink in these two flowers as well. So go ahead and do yours. I'm going to do mine, and when we come back, we'll finish up. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and start to finish up the Zentangle here by coming in and doing my little Bronx cheer flowers that I have here. You can see that I'm just going around and adding those in with the gold. I'll go over to the other side and do the same thing, so I'm just going to come in and add the gold in. I just find it so relaxing to work over the top of the chalk. And if there's any lines that aren't working for you, you can, take liberty with them. And there you see we've got ourselves all inked in with the gold, which I love. So take a minute to let your piece dry here. Once your piece has dried, I'm going to come in with a little bit of my gummy eraser, and you can see if I come in really nice and close that there's a little bit of debris or a little bit of that white pen still showing up. And what I love about the gummy erasers is that you can come in and just drag it across, and it just cleans right up so that you don't even see what you had there. Now, I haven't done my border yet. I will do the border in a minute, but I'm just going into the internal part of the piece and just cleaning it up. And you can see I don't have to press hard. It just comes right off. So it's really quite nice to work with those materials in here. I'm just going to go around. And then once I've got it all cleaned up the way I like it, I'm going to go ahead and add my border in with gold. So you're going to see me just come around and create that border. And you can see that once I've had a chance to come all the way around, that border really does tie everything into each other here. So it really gives this whole thing a nice feel. So take a moment to finish that up, clean up your page the way that you like it, and when we come back, we are going to start with color. Yeah. All right, I'll see you in a minute. All right, so here we go. So I'm going to start to pick up some colors for this piece here. And don't worry if you don't have the same colors as me. If you can get into the same hue, that's great. Or if you want to go completely off the rails and do your own color, I say by all means, go ahead and do your own thing. Now I am going to have my Prismacolor white handy. This is one of my favorite color pencils, and this is PC938, and this gives such a nice highlight or a shading to a piece. It just makes it pop. So if you've got your white pencil from your color pencil set, it is not the same as the Generals. The Generals is chalk. This is a wax-based pencil. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick up the light aqua, and this is PC992. This is one of my favorite colors from Prisma, and you can see that I have a brand new pencil. I'm very fancy over here. I got to go to Riley Street Art Supply in San Rafael, which is my favorite art store, and pick up some more color pencils to add to my set because I had used mine all the way down till they weren't even sharpenable again. So I also happen to have in my hand the denim blue, which is PC1101, and you can see that I've got a light blue and a dark blue. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start with the light blue first, and what I want you to think about is you want your pencil to be sharpened up so that you're working on the side of the pencil. So I might just go ahead and sharpen mine up just a skosh more. And then I'm going to start by holding the pencil on its side. You can see I'm holding with my thumb and my index finger, and then I'll use my other fingers to stabilize here. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to very softly rub the side of the pencil down onto the bird's body here, or onto the paper. And once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and really make sure that that background has got a good layer on there. It's a nice saturated layer. Once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take this right in here and start to bring it just into the main part of the tail right in here. Now, most of you know that I like to do something called carrying color, and so I'm going to take this blue and start to just bring it out into the wing, and you can see here's the scallop in the middle, and that's where the blue is going to go. So it's just going to divide the colors in here. And then I'll go to the other side and I'll do the same thing. Now once I have that, I'm going to also take that color and start to bring it into the leaves over here. So I'm going very, very softly with this pencil. I'm not pressing hard. I'm adding just a foundation of color in here. And I'll do the same thing on this side. Once I have that all done, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to let go of that light blue. You go ahead and finish up yours, and when we come back, we're going to start to do some shading. Alright, so I've got my darker blue in my hand here, and once again I'm going to go very, very lightly with this blue. It's just going to go around the outside edge. We're going to do a little bit of what Maria does. She does a lot of perimeter shading, and so I'm going to do a lot of perimeter shading here as well. So I'm just going to go around and get right in there and do a nice perimeter shade. Going very lightly with that pencil because it's got plenty of pigmentation to it, so I don't have to press hard. Now once I have that, I'm going to pick up that light white pencil right in here, and I'm going to start to bring a little glow right into the center of my bird. So it's almost like a little line that's coming right down the center of the bird. I'll pick back up that aqua blue that I started out with, and I'm going to go right over the top of that white and then start to blur the edges of where the dark blue and the light blue are meeting. And you can see that that's given him quite the glow. Now once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take some of that white again and start to carry it into the wing just to get that wing to glow. And you can see that I'm mimicking that scallop right in the center of that wing. See how that's working? I'm going to do the same thing over here. So I'm just creating that really nice kind of glow right in the center. Now at the bottom of the wing of the bird, I'm going to take some of that darker blue and I'm going to just dust the bottom of that internal scallop there. You can see that I'm just working right in here. And I'll do the same thing on the other side. Once I have that, then I'll come back in with that aqua blue and I'll blur the whole thing out. So you can see that I'm just kind of running that pencil right over the top. Super fun, super easy. Take a minute to finish yours up, and then when we come back, we're going to start to work inside of our corners. Alright, so working in the corners here, I'm going to pick up two colors that I love. I have the lilac, or rather the lavender. This is PC 934, the lavender. It's really a beautiful light purple color. And then I have processed red in my hand, which is one of my all-time favorites, and I'm getting close to the end of this one, can you tell? And that is PC 994, okay? So PC 994, and then this one is PC 934. Now I'm going to start with working with the lavender first, and you're going to see me start to come up and just dust the edges of this leaf here, and I'm going very, very lightly with that pencil. I'm not laying this down heavy here. Okay. Now, I know that some of you have been in class with me before and you know this, but I'm just going to reiterate it for those of you who have never been in class with me before. Each color pencil has three different colors. You have your light, you have your medium, and you have your dark. Now, when you're working with a color that doesn't have a ton of pigmentation to it, it's sometimes difficult to notice the difference between the medium and the dark. And that's why I always like to have a color that's in the same hue handy to create those shading pieces. Okay? So I'm just going to take this away, and you're going to see me start to come in now with that process red. So I'm going to use that process red right up at the tips of the leaf here, and I was really kind of thinking about fall when I was doing this. So I'm just getting this kind of really beautiful deep purple, almost like a magenta color on here. And then once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to blur out my edges by pressing with a medium pressure in between the lavender and the processed red, and you'll start to see that that blurs the edge out really, really nicely. And you'll also notice that I kind of lift up my pressure as I'm moving inside of that processed red, so that it gives it a really nice kind of transition between the lavender and the processed red. So if I go in and I really can make that a little bit bigger, you can see that it's got a softness to it that I really enjoy. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this on the other side right in here. I've got a little bit of that lavender in my hand. I'm just going to dust the page. I'm using that light pressure at first. Then I come in with the processed red, and I would say I'm using a medium pressure with that processed red. And then finally, once I've got that processed red in there, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start to blur my edges by doing a medium pressure with that lavender pencil. So I'm blurring my edges. And I'm lightening up as I go into that darker red. Now this one I feel like I've got a little bit too much white in there, so I can come back in and start to work with that processed red and give it a little bit of depth if I feel like I've just got too much light in there. So that when I go ahead and I zoom out, look at how pretty that flanks the whole piece. It's really beautiful. So go ahead, do all of your corners, and then when we come back, we're going to bring this color into our bird in here. All right, so I'm going to continue on using this color that we have right here. So I have the processed red in my hand. This is that darker purple or kind of magenta-ish color. And I'm going to start to bring that into those triangles that are underneath our wing. And you'll see that I'm just going to add a dusting of it into each one of these petals in here. So I'm just coming in and bringing those in. And then once I have that, I'll go ahead and I'll bring a little bit of that lavender right into the tip of each triangle. And I'm going to try to blur out my edges while I'm doing this so that I get a really nice transition into each of these. Let's go ahead and make this a little bit bigger so that you can see. And you can see that that brings such a beautiful vividness into the piece here. Now I might just go back and forth with some of that darker color and some of that lighter color just to play and get just the right transition for myself. So you can see that I'm just kind of going back and forth there. I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side. So go ahead and do yours. I'm going to finish up mine, and when we come back, we are going to start to work with the inside of the wings of the bird. So before we go into the wings of the bird, I'm just going to add a little bit of this purpley kind of color that we've been working with into the tail here. So you're going to see me just add a little bit right in here and right over here. And then finally I'll pick up just a little bit of the lavender in here and dust that into the tail there. I'm going to go ahead and flip the page over here, and we're going to start to work inside of the wings of the bird. And I have one of my favorite colors of all time in the Prismacolor set in my hand. This is the blush pink. I love this color. There's something very earthy about it that I really love. And this is PC 928. I just love this color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring that color in right into this scalloped edge over here. So you can see that I'm coming in and I'm actually using a pretty heavy pressure on this because The blush pink does not have a ton of pigmentation to it. So as I start to work through here, you can see that I'm pressing a little bit harder and really trying to make sure that that background is not coming through. Sorry, I have a little frog in my throat today. So once I've got that, I'm going to go to the other side, and you can see that I'm turning my tile to make this work for my hands here. And then once I have that, I might just add a little bit of white right down the center of it to get a little bit of illumination in it. So I'm just going to come in and really get that going. And just continuing to bring this over to the other side. And get that right in there as well. Really, really pretty. One of my favorite colors in the Prismacolor set. Now I am going to pick up a little bit of a darker red just to run over the top of the pink, just to give it a little bit of a pop. And one of my other favorite colors in the Prisma set is the magenta, and this is PC930. Okay, can you tell that I love this pencil? It's a great one. So I'm going to take this color, and all I'm going to do is start to run it right at the bottom edge of that pink. And the reason why I'm using the magenta is because it has a bluish-like quality to it that is what I'm going for. I'm wanting to stick in the cold kind of color family here. So I'm going to go over here and do the same. I'm just kind of running that through. And then once I've had a chance to do that, I'll grab some of that blush pink again and I'll start to blur it out a little bit. So you can see that I'm going to just circle up into the white a little bit, and I'm also circling into the magenta just to get it to soften. I don't want to have a hard line there. I want it to be soft. And you can see that that gives that a really soft appeal. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start to take those colors and we're going to start to bring them outward just a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to come back in a little, and I'm going to take that very same pink and start to bring it into those little tulips on the edges of these flowers in here. So you're going to see me come over to this side and to this side and add that in, and then I'll take some of that magenta and bring that into the bottom of each tulip petal in here, and just dip that right in. And you can see that that gives a really nice feeling between the two. It almost keeps that movement going outward, which is really what we're looking for. So go ahead and finish those up, and then when we come back, we're going to start to work on the flower heads that we have here. Okay, so I'm going to start with two colors that I really, really love here. I happen to have the yellowed orange in my hand. This is PC1002. And I love this color. It just has a beautiful Spanish flair to it. You can also use the Spanish orange, which is PC1003, but I love this one as well. And then I also have pale vermilion in my hand here. This is a really wonderful orange to work with, and this is PC921. Okay? So I'm going to start by bringing in some of the yellowed orange in here, and I'm going to come in with a little bit of a heavier hand. This one's going to have a little bit more pressure on it. I would say I'm using a medium to heavy pressure, and I'm starting to get into these pieces that are right in at the top. I'm going to go all the way around the piece and do that, so you're going to see me come over here and do it. You notice that the pencil is working in a circular motion because that's going to give us a nice even distribution of color. I'm going to keep on rolling here, going all the way around. Nice heavy hand there. And then finally coming over to the other side and getting right in there. Now I'm going to go back in and I'm going to come back up into this area right in here, and I'm going to start with that pale vermilion, and I'm going to press in here pretty heavy. And I'll go all the way around with that as well. And we're looking for a little bit of pop here. So that's what we're really working on, is just getting a little bit of pop. And I'm really loving all these colors. I hope you're enjoying them too. And then once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab that magenta that we were working with earlier, and I'm just going to add a splash of it at the bottom of the orange in here. You can see that that gives it a little bit of definition. You can see that that kind of makes it interesting. So I'll go ahead and add a splash of it at the bottom of the orange. And the same thing over here as well, so that when we go ahead and zoom out, it really has that nice pop that we're looking for. Now on the yellow, we could come in with a little bit of the white pencil and just add a highlight right at the top of the arcs. So let's go ahead and zoom that in one more time. And I can just very, very lightly add a dusting. It's almost like an angelic light at the top of each of these little flowers here. So just a dusting of it. And I'm just going to keep on turning here. So just a little light dusting. And one more time. And then if you feel the need to come back in with some of that yellow just to soften it up, you can soften it up a little bit too. But it just brings a little bit of electricity into the piece, which I love. We'll come down here and get that going as well. So go ahead and finish yours up, and then when we come back, we're going to take that really fun yellow that we just brought into the edges and bring it into the wings. So I'm going to take that very same yellow that we started with here and start to bring it into the wings. You're going to see me just start to fill that in. I'm still using a heavier pressure with this because it doesn't have a lot of pigmentation to it. So we need a little bit of extra push with this. And then once I have that, I'm going to come in and dust it a little bit with some of that white right up at the top. Just to give it a little bit of a brightness, and then I'll give a little bit of a dusting of that yellow. Okay, so go ahead and do yours, I'll do mine, and then when we come back, we're going to finish off the petals in the corners here. So I have the magenta and the orange in my hands here, and I'm going to start to come into these petals that we have right here. And I love putting warm colors next to cold colors. There's something about it that just really is intriguing to me. So I'm going to go ahead and add in that pale vermilion at first. So you can see that I'm bringing in the pale vermilion. Usually I add the dark at the bottom, but this time I'm going to add the dark at the top. So I'm going to come in with that magenta and start to bring in that magenta up at the top. So it has a really kind of fiery like quality to it, which is really beautiful. I'll dip in just a little bit into that orange just to give it a really nice blend, and I might go back and forth with it a little bit by coming in and going back and forth with the orange and the magenta until I get the right blend for me. Okay, so I'm going to go around to all four of my corners and do just that. Wow, this is really coming along. I love this piece. There's something so fun and joyful about it. It just makes me happy to look at it, and I hope it's making you happy too. I'm going to go ahead and grab the orange and the pale vermilion again, and I'm also going to pick up that process red and the lavender. And you can see that I've got the three flowers on top here. And in the center one, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bit of the lavender in the center, and I'm just going to add a splash of it into each of those petals. And then in the center, I'm going to do that really pretty pop of process red in there. And then on the outside pieces, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and grab that yellow and bring the yellow into these right here. And coming around to the other side. And then I'll grab a little bit of that orange and put it into the center. So you go ahead and do yours. I'm going to do mine, and when we come back, we're going to finish off with some small details. All right, so this is really coming together. So final pieces here, we have our little leaves to finish up on our piece here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up the chartreuse. This is a color I don't use very often, but you know me, I always like a good challenge. This is 989. And then I happen to have the grass green in my hand here, and unfortunately I cannot read the number on this. Let me see if I can or not. I can't. I'm not sure what to do about that. I will have to just wing it. So if you have the grass green in your set or the parrot green, that will also do for this piece here. Now I'm going to go ahead and start with the chartreuse in here, and you can see that I'm going to lay down that color pretty heavily because once again we have a color that doesn't have a ton of pigmentation to it. So I'm just going to get right in there with it, and then I'm going to take some of that grass green and start to dip into the bottom and give that a little bit of a detail. And then once I have that, I'm going to take some of that white and bring the white up to the top and just give that a little pop. Now I'll take the chartreuse again and I'll start to blend in right where that grass green is meeting and a little bit into that white, and you can see that that just kind of gives it a softening. Really pretty. So I'm going to go around to all of my leaves. You're going to see me come in over here, and over here. And then when we finish up, we'll add a little bit of yellow into the tail here. So take your time, finish that up, and when we come back, we'll just do some fine tuning. So I'm just going to add a little splash of color into the tail here. And you can see why we are calling it the Pajaro Festivo, because it is such a festive tile, isn't it? It makes you smile when you look at it. You can't help but be happy when you look at it. Now I'm going to go into my bird here, and I'm going to give him a little bit of an eye. And I like my birds to seem dreamy, so I'm just going to do kind of a smiley face for his eye. I'm going to just come in and give him a little smiley face there for his eye. And then I think what I want to do is I want to add some highlights to this piece. Now I know that I didn't talk about having your white pen handy, but I really feel like I want to add some white to this one. I didn't do it in the first one, but I want to do it with this one. So I've picked up my Signo Uniball white, but if you happen to have the Sakura white jelly roll, you can grab it. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into these wings and add a little bit of some dots in there. And I think I'm going to go up into the flower and add a little bit of a triangle of white up in each of these little flowers. Coming over to the side here. And I think I'm going to even go into my little daisies and add a little dot into my daisies, just to give them a little bit of a pop, as if this piece needed more pop. Come on. Super fun. And then I think I will add another dot right into where the leaves are. So I'm just going to go around and add those into the leaves. And I might even add a little arc of happiness into the flowers. You can see I'm just giving that a little bit of a pop. I mean, you could go hog wild with the white pen. I do love it. And then if you're really feeling like you want to get a little bit more festive with it, you could add some dots around your flowers up in here. So maybe adding a couple of dots around the top of the flowers in here. Depending on how you feel. Might come around here and just get right in there. I might come over to the sides too and have some fun with that. Depends on how much space you've got, really. You can see that that just brings a little bit more festiveness inside. I might even add a dot into his tail feathers as well. So go ahead and finish yours up, and when we come back we are going to add our chop. Alright, so I'm going to grab my gold pen here, and I'm just going to add my chop into the piece. And I think I'm just going to put my chop right here on top of this little swirl and just let it be done. Just my way of finishing it up and saying that I've completed. Now, I know that a lot of you might notice that this tangle looks very familiar, and I did something early on in the pandemic called the Divine Dove. It's a video that you can find on the channel here. It's one of the free videos, and I kept thinking about it as I was doing this. Oh my gosh, this reminds me so much of the Divine Dove. And then it got me starting to think, earlier this week I found out that one of my Zentangle heroes had passed away, and her name is Ellen Walters, and I know many of you may know Ellen's work, and for those of you who don't know her work, go and check her out on YouTube. I have put her link in the class description for this video. Whenever I didn't know how to do a tangle, I would always go to Ellen's videos and watch her do them. She was patient, she was talented, she was gracious and graceful, and she was always very friendly to me on Facebook. Whenever I would post something, she was always very encouraging, and she will be deeply, deeply missed. So I am dedicating this class to the memory of Ellen Walters, and if you have somebody in your life that you would like to dedicate this to, I hope you'll share it with your friends and put it out into the world as a piece of positivity. So with that said, I really hope that you enjoyed the class, and if you did, you can give it a thumbs up or leave us a nice review. And please check out our other videos and join us on the Tangled Yogi Facebook art community page and share your work. We would love to see what you're working on. So once again, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you loved the class. And my name is Rami Marks. I'm your Tangled Yogi. Until we tangle again. Bye for now.